Welcome to the Cherish and Conquer podcast, the show dedicated to celebrating female entrepreneurs' strength, resilience, and innovation. Be inspired by stories of women and what they cherish to help them conquer against all odds. Every other week, you will learn from remarkable women on how they navigate challenges, uphold their values, and create sustainable success. And now, here's your host, Jim Rembach.
Hello and welcome to the Cherish and Conquer podcast. Today we're going to talk about something that I think sometimes can be a mystery and then also sometimes can be something that gets overused when you do know about it. And we'll talk about that in a second. But ultimately we're saying what drains you and why is how we oftentimes think. But let's flip it around and say, how can you discover how to be more resilient? Because that's really what we're going to talk about today. And we have Helen Kane on the show with us today. Helen, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jim.
Now, before we actually get into the discussion on really the two different ways that we message in our brain, with the, hey, how do I, what drains me and why versus how to be more resilient, tell everybody who's listening and watching how you're actually making a difference in the lives of the people that you work with today.
Well, the way in which I support people in my work is that I help them to truly understand what it is that gives them energy, what it is that puts that fire in their belly, that means that when they're going about their day, that they're able to do that feeling fulfilled, energized, and getting the best out of themselves. So I help people to have that awareness of their strengths and what puts that fire in the belly, and then how they use it on a day-to-day basis.
And so for you to be able to do that, you're actually collecting information, you're collecting data, you're also comparing that with other data sets of people who've actually gone through assessments. And when you start looking at how you're identifying the information that's necessary in order to help the people do that, kind of walk us through that a little bit.
Okay, so I use a psychometric profile that's called Strengths Scope. Strengths Scope was formed by two doctors in psychology who were a little bit preoccupied that what we often do, especially in the workplace, is that we focus on the things that perhaps we're not so good at. We focus on looking at, well, what's the job specification? What are the things that we need to get done? How are we doing it? And really how we need to improve on those areas that we're not so good at. And what they wanted to do was really flip that around and say, but actually, what about all those things that we're great at? What about those things that give us energy? What about our underlying qualities? Rather than just looking at a skill set, let's look at the stuff that puts that fire in our belly, that really gets us going. So I use the Strengths Scope profile, which helps encourage people to think about what you like at your very, very best. You on a really good day, what does that look like? They answer a variety of questions, and then that brings out a profile. And it's a wheel of 24 strengths, and you can see the 7 standout strengths, the 7 areas that give somebody the most energy. And what we do is we look at, well, how do we use those strengths? How do they show up? Are we using them enough? What can we do in order to maybe combine them? It's that idea of synergy, a synergy of strengths where the combination of all of those strengths is much, much more and gives us much more energy than just looking at them separately.
Well, and also too, when you started talking about that and you said at work, I mean, it's really for everybody because everybody's an individual contributor to some degree. And then it has an effect on others that we're interacting with or that we're working for or that we're working with. And so entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, teams, I mean, we're talking about this. This is really something for everyone. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just the way that Strengths Scope was in, the intentionality was about looking at workplaces. However, what gives us strength comes out in our relationships. It comes out in how we do parenting. It comes out in the lifestyle that we choose, the things that we choose to do on a day-to-day basis. So whilst the underlying intentionality has been around the workplace, it's massively transferable. And when I'm undertaking strengths coaching with the people that I work with, I definitely get them to think about, well, how does that translate across the board and within the other areas of life as well?
Well, and another thing we had talked off mic, you were saying something that kind of struck me a little bit, but I think it makes sense for us when we start really breaking it down and thinking about it. You had mentioned something about, resilience, being able to apply our strengths. However, if we over apply or if we're using that particular strength too much, that actually has a negative effect. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, totally. So I'm working with somebody at the moment who's in a really senior role, very responsible role as a consultant, and they're going to work and they need to make decisions each and every day, difference between life and death, that sort of decision, and invest a lot of the energy in doing that in work and in supporting the team, lots of empathy and compassion, really efficient in doing that. And one of the dangers of that, when I've explored that with this person, is that leaves them feeling extremely drained when they then come away from work. So whilst within that workspace, those strengths are hugely constructive for them, there's, it has a positive impact on the support and the care that they provide. Upon coming home, they can then find that they're totally spent. So there is a danger when we are, a vulnerability, I suppose, when we are applying our strengths, that we don't overdo it and that we leave space so that we can still feel energized rather than feeling drained by the very things that actually put the fire in our belly.
Well, yeah, and another thing that we had talked about is how we need to really leverage positive psychology. And in a lot of instances, our default really has us focusing in on rehashing the past, talking about what failed, and really, over focusing and overemphasizing those things. And I think it's really important for us to, be able to look at what we need to do versus what we did. And that's where positive psychology comes into play. So help us a little with how do I get myself into the more positive mode approach, more so than thinking about the whole failure component?
Well, it's about mindset, and it's about us being able to frame that mindset in a much more positive way. And we can do that through strengths coaching. But I find that that's enhanced by considering some of the presuppositions of NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming, rather than looking at failure as, at something where we've got weaknesses and stuff that we just can't do, which can lead us to be really bogged down. If we can get into a spiral where our energy is absorbed, our confidence suffers, we don't feel then able to present in our best selves. Whereas one of the presuppositions of NLP is that there's no such thing as failure, but only feedback. So it's about how we frame that and about us looking at, if something hasn't perhaps gone the way that we've expected, it's a learning experience. It isn't something that we need to beat ourselves up about. It's something that we can reflect upon and then learn so that we can take it forward. And when we're in that mindset of being, where we're wanting to learn and we're open to opportunities, our brain functions differently. It opens up, we have the neurons firing, and we're able to draw upon some much more positive and creative solutions than we are if we've got that real focus on, weaknesses and vulnerabilities, and we're closing our mind off. We really want to be able to open up our thinking so that we can pull upon all that really positive stuff that's there in our subconscious.
So if I start thinking about, you mentioned something about 24 different strengths that are measured, and we start talking about, focusing in on, leveraging neuro-linguistic programming. That's how we're starting to put the building blocks in place in order to be more resilient, in order to understand limitations. And I would dare to say, when we start looking at the things that we go through just throughout our lifetimes, some of these things kind of shift and change too, don't they?
MyrinaAi draws inspiration from the legendary Amazonian Queen Myrina, embodying resilience and strategic brilliance. With our AI-powered SaaS platform, we equip women-led businesses for success in the evolving landscape of AI and business automation. As a partner and community for female-led businesses, MyrinaAi maximizes their potential using AI while providing essential support. Ready to amplify your success using AI with like-minded ladies? Register or learn more at MyrinaAi. And now, back to our interview.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you're able to really draw upon the stuff that gives you energy, you're then able to have transformational change. You're able to shift how you think about what it is that you're capable of doing. And having that awareness and that understanding and using it in a way that is genuinely rooted in getting the best out of yourself, it sets you on fire. It allows you to build momentum. It becomes contagious as well. It can impact the people around you to see that energy. And when people start noticing that, you then get feedback, and that feedback, it snowballs in the most positive way. You start building up and going, actually, I can do this. Look at what I'm capable of. And then that allows you to be even more intentional about how you're going to, make sure that your strengths are showing up and that you're getting the best out of yourself going forward.
I also have to think that attempting to do some of the things in isolation aren't going to be very productive either, are they?
I think it's really important that when we're thinking about our strengths, we are using them in synergy. We are focused on we're not just a one-trick pony. We've got other strings to our bow. There are other things that we can use that will really set us on our way. Because if we're just too focused on one thing, not only is that vulnerability and that performance risk that you're going to overdo it, but it might well be that you're using it in the wrong context as well. And that can be another way that overusing our strengths can really sort of go against us. So if we're using them, in conjunction with one another, then we're going to get a more rounded approach, and people are going to understand our essence and what we're about much more effectively.
Well, and for me, in context of working in isolation, meaning I'm doing this work on me, can be more difficult versus saying, hey, I'm working with someone else, whether it's a coach, a colleague, a team. I mean, there's some type of collaboration going on here. And also, I think there's some, particular negative sides if you're doing this type of development work with somebody who you know very closely. There's certain things that happen from a family perspective, for example, that are just, not going to help you move forward because people will protect you. Where you have to have somebody who has an outside perspective in order for you to really make a difference in being more positive in regards to being able to turn some of the negatives into something that's going to generate a better result. So tell us a little bit about that dynamic, because I think a lot of times people think that, well, I could do it myself. Yeah. And I don't think that's the case.
Yeah. Well, it's that whole, there's a real growing understanding that coaches need coaches. So coaches already have a really specific area of skills, their own strengths that they bring to that role, but still coaches need coaches, because it's allowing for that sort of independent perspective on, and for somebody who doesn't have an agenda. When you're coaching somebody, you don't have an agenda other than allowing whoever you're coaching to take that journey where they want to take it. So when I first was accredited as a strengths coach, the way in which I supported in that role was I worked for a national organisation, and I offered coaching to people in different parts of the country. I wasn't connected to the line management process. I wasn't part of the team. I didn't have an overarching agenda that was around, the local organisational goals. I was completely detached from the work that they were doing on a day-to-day basis. It helped that I had an understanding of what that role was, but it meant that they were able to come into that session to relax, to be open, to be honest, to be transparent, and to think in a much more creative way than they might do with the line manager. Even when you've got a really positive relationship with your line manager, there are always those biases that are in place where you might think, oh, I won't suggest that. They probably don't think that's a good idea. Oh, that won't be a goer. So I'm not gonna go down that road. Whereas when you do that with somebody who's in a coaching capacity and independent from that structure, you're much more likely to go, oh, do you know what? I'll just mention this. And then you can start that conversation. And then what would happen on the back of that is that they would then go to their own line manager if they did have an idea, and they'd scoped it out with me and they'd explored it and boosted their confidence and thought about really strategically and intentionally about how they would use their strengths in order to move things forward. Then taking that to the line manager wasn't quite as daunting. It was something that they were able to go, oh, do you know what? Yeah, let's give this a bash. And it's the same to be said when, one of the things that I share with people who, organisations or teams who might want to commission my service, they might already have a decent setup as far as wellbeing is concerned. They may have, decent HR or organisational development partners, but they're still part of the organisation. And it's a bit like marking your own homework, isn't it? You're going to mark your own homework. There are things that you might just skirt over a little bit. There's stuff that you might go, oh, well, we don't really go there. Whereas actually, if you've got somebody who is independent, who doesn't have an agenda, and all they're doing is reflecting back and encouraging you to consider the things that you're raising, the stuff that you're bringing out in those sessions, then it's a much more constructive sort of context within which to be working.
I think that's so important, and I think what does the old saying go in regards to lawyers? It said any lawyer who represents themselves has a fool for a client. And you have to think about some of these things associated with development, because it's a journey. We have to be really careful how we're going about doing that. Self-help can only take you so far, and a lot of times it takes you in the wrong direction. So we have to be really careful. Okay, so I'd really love to know what inspired you to start your own business, and how does it align with the concept of Cherish and Conquer?
Well, I could probably talk for about 3 days on this. Fundamentally, my own personal value base is absolutely what's driven me. It comes from being the eldest of 5 children. My parents separated when I was 11, so I played quite a significant role in family life. My mum was, and my dad, because mum and dad were together until I was 11, they were supported by my grandparents. And my nana, I used to spend loads of time going to see my nana when I was a child, and she had so many aspirations for me. She was really clear. I was tiny, and I remember when we moved into the parish in which we grew up. My nana was very religious, and she invited the priest to come and do a visit. And she said to the priest, "Oh, she's a really bright girl, our Helen. She really wants to help people. And you know what? She's going to go to university and she's going to be a teacher." And that was the absolute pinnacle of, in the 80s, if you were going to, from a council estate in Preston, if you were going to really win at life, you were going to be a teacher. And that confidence and that gave me aspirations. That made me think, do you know what? I really do want to be going to university. I was the first person in my family to get a degree, and it really propelled me forward. And it was, some of my life experiences, growing up around, some adversities and deprivation. I would get involved in, like at school, I'd get involved in fundraising. And, I always had a real clear value that everybody deserved opportunity. So it didn't matter where you lived, what family you came from, mistakes that you might have made. We all deserve to have opportunities. And unfortunately, the way those opportunities present is different depending on the context in which you live. And I've always felt very strongly that we should do something about that context. We should do something so that people who perhaps don't feel that they're in a position in order to take opportunities are given the right cheerleaders around them, the right support, the right messages, and the right, inspiration so that they can achieve the things that they want to achieve. And it was that value base that took me into social work. So I've been a social worker for 22 years. I started off working in youth justice services. I've worked in various contexts in the public sector with children, young people and their families. And I've always been propelled by that. And what that social work training did to me is it made sense of some of my values, and it put some of it within a theoretical and strategic context, which almost illuminated them. It did set them alight. It helped me to apply the stuff that was so important to my core, but become much more conscious and intentional and aware of what that looked like. And I suppose when I then made this decision that I was going to set up my own business, I spent quite a lot of time initially just thinking, who am I? What? Because I've been in social work in the public sector, which was a very pressured environment at times, extremely stressful at other times, massively rewarding. And that cultural shift to setting up my own business, I've got to say, it did rock me at first. I just thought, what's this about? And I got involved with a business support service locally, and I've got a business advisor. So one of the initial conversations that we had was him saying, well, what are you about and what are the values that are bringing you into what you're doing? And it's like you say, you don't always realise this stuff on your own. But when all he needed to do was ask me that question. And what it did for me is it made me go, oh, my days, it's almost like I've rubbed out all this experience that I've brought in life just because I'm new to business. I'm not new to life. I'm not new to coaching. I'm not new to supporting people to build the resilience and to get the very, very best out of themselves. And when that clicked into place, that absolutely helped me to be much more clear about what it is that I bring as a coach, and to be confident to reflect upon all of those experiences and to value what I'm bringing into the coaching world and what it is that I've got to offer people, whether that be on a one-to-one, whether that be in a team, in an organisation, whether that be a community group or services that charities offer. It just helped crystallise what that means for me and how I can deliver the very best that I've got.
Oh, that's a fantastic.
I talk forever, don't I, Jim? Sorry.
No, that was fantastic. I mean, the dimensions that you shared within that and how you actually went through and found that clarity because of their guidance, and I think that was very insightful. So thank you for that. Mm-hmm. And so you talked about opened up for you. I'd like to know if you could share a story when embracing feminine qualities or strengths actually helped you to overcome a challenge in your business or launching that business.
At the core of MyrinaAi is customization and the innovative AI you process, which uses AI to infuse your personality, style, and vision into cloning you and growing your business. Are you ready to amplify your success using AI with a community of fellow female entrepreneurs? Go to MyrinaAi today. And now, back to the interview.
I don't know whether it's necessarily feminine, but I think that the thing for me that really helped me launch and to connect with my business was authenticity. And part of that, I suppose, is me as a woman. What it is, as a parent, I'm a mum. So those responsibilities and the absolute privileges that I have from being a mum, I raise and have raised my child on my own. She's 16, and just not I think sometimes, particularly when I was younger in my social work career, I might have felt a little bit vulnerable. Firstly, the vulnerabilities can be about, well, are you a parent? So you can't support families if you're not a parent. But then if there were things that perhaps my responsibilities would then maybe mean that, parts of my role would need to just be parked slightly, or I'd need to put things to one side whilst I prioritised parenting. And I think, thankfully, in the UK, things are massively changing around parental responsibilities in the workplace, and that flexibility that's afforded to mothers and parents. And for me, being able to just truly be authentic about what it is that I am, what my life looks like, where my responsibilities fit, and how that impacts what I bring. And I think it does give a much more measured and honest and relatable service. I remember once going for an interview, and it was for a senior management position. It was one that I didn't really expect to get, if I'm honest. I'd gone into for the experience. I just thought, throw your hat in the ring, get the experience. And one of the things that I understand resonated really well was me talking about some of my experiences as a parent, and the way in which I tried to balance that, and I really love the concept of, we talk about work-life balance a lot. I love the concept of a work-life blend, and that you're blending it together. And it doesn't always, the scales don't always balance out. Sometimes it's one way, sometimes it's another, but they blend together. And I think being in business has certainly allowed me to have that blend, and have that blend on my own terms. Not necessarily it's all perfect and it's exactly how you want to see this perfect life, but in a way that means that I've been able to be true to myself. And first and foremost, my most important role is as a parent. Mother to my girl comes before absolutely anything. And as it happens, the past 12 months has coincided with my daughter being in her final year of GCSEs, of high school. And high school has been quite a tricky environment for her. I could spend another 3 days talking about some of my ideas around education systems. But in effect, the reality is there are times when I've needed to be totally available, drop everything, and do what I've needed to do. And being in business has afforded me that opportunity. And I also think that what I've been really humbled by, and that what's just then really helped you to propel forward, is the support of the community as well. The support of my business community. I couldn't imagine. I've made brilliant friends being in the public sector. You're absolutely bonded by those experiences, those real challenges of, working with children, young people and the families at the most stressful time of their life. What I didn't expect is that I could make similar connections with people in business, having those cheerleaders, having the people who, are interested in what I do, who will offer me support, who will offer me guidance. And I'm part of a number of female networking groups, which just brings about that gorgeous feminine energy. And I'm not exclusively in female networking groups. I love being in the, with guys as well. It's a really, gives us a right good balance. But I do think that being able to just celebrate being a woman, and celebrate that we are doing this on terms that mean that we can live life in the way that we want to live. We can be parents in the way that we want to be parents. We can, be friends, with all these dimensions that we have, because we're not just these people in business. We're people, aren't we? We've got so many different strings to our bow.
Well, as you're saying that, I start thinking about going back to the conversation about, positive psychology versus, rehashing things that fail. I think what you just talked about right there is so critically important from a positive perspective, because if I am, and I don't want to say necessarily, I think your word's best, blend. If I blend all of the different parts of me, whether it's, the professional support, whether it's the, heck, even parenting community, whether it's, I mean, all of these types of things. I think looking at it from that, omni type of approach is probably the most helpful in order for us to take perspectives from all of those particular areas and be more resilient. Because now I have a viewpoint that is not so isolated to one particular group.
Yeah, and I think that's where feedback is so important, isn't it? So it's really interesting you say that. It was my business anniversary on Wednesday, so I'd done a year in business. And in the afternoon, I went to a spa with my best friend. We've been best friends since we're at just started high school. She knows everything. She's my go-to. We absolutely adore each other. And I was sat reflecting on some stuff, and I'd said to her, I'd just done a reel for you to share on social media. And I said, I hadn't quite realised the stuff that I'd achieved. And then I'd fallen into, I wanted to do this today. And she literally just said, Helen, you're fabulous, you're this, you're that, you're the other. And she started rhyming off all this stuff. And I chuckled to myself and I said, but you'll say that because you're my best friend. And she said, I will say that because I'm your best friend. However, it's because you need to hear it. And I just think that absolute, she didn't say, oh, well, yeah, you could have done that, Helen, which, I could have done stuff, but she just had the essence of me. And it's so important to have people who offer you different things. So I've got that in my best friend. My business advisor, who's also a coach. He will hold me to account. He will absolutely say, well, what is it that you're thinking about this, Helen? Where are you going with that? What do you think that will bring? And sometimes I literally want to poke him in the eye and say, leave me alone, get off my case. I'm cracking on with it. This is my business. But it's another dimension that I need. I absolutely need that. And then other times I need bringing back to reality by my daughter. If I've been busy, I've been on the go, efficiency is definitely a standout strength for me. So I can be boom, 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 get on with stuff. And then sometimes all she needs is just a little bit of chill. And she'll go, Mum, what's going on at the moment? And it just brings you back to reality to go, oh yeah, actually, I probably need to wind my neck in a little bit there. Just go with the flow a little bit more and not present in a way that things have to be so prescribed and go a certain way. So I think there are all those different dimensions and they all have something to bring. It's not to say that one's better than the other, one's more valuable than the other. It's about how we look at, understand ourselves and look at actually what sense do I make of all this together? How much do I focus on these areas of feedback so that I am as resilient as I possibly can be? And also so that I'm giving as well as I possibly can. The feedback from my daughter, it's brilliant because it helps me to go, oh yeah, right, all right. And to really think about how I am as a parent. And everybody wants that, don't they? Who doesn't want to get the best from themselves? Who doesn't want to be able to be rocking and rolling and going, yeah, this is all sorted. Those curveballs come in, I can take it. We can manage this because I understand myself and I know the things that I need to just dial up a little bit just to get me through. Or sometimes this isn't toxic positivity. This isn't saying everything's amazing. Sometimes it's about sitting in that place and going, oh, all right, this is where we are. Okay, but I can have some optimism about what the future looks like. We might be here today, but I understand where I want to go. I understand how I'm going to get there. So I might camp out here briefly, but we're not checking in and staying in this hotel forever. It's just where we are today. So, it's really helpful to take a balanced perspective and to see life through, a more varied and I suppose it's a balanced lens, isn't it?
Most definitely. I mean, thank you for sharing that. So now we're actually going to pick up the pace a little bit and we're actually going to go through our Breakthrough Blitz. Okay, Helen, this is an opportunity for you to give us quick, rapid answers to a few questions. So are you ready to help us break through?
Yep, I sure am.
All right, here we go. So what's your favorite productivity tool or app?
Ooh, obviously it has to be StrengthsScope. However, I do love Calm. Brilliant.
What's your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
Walk the dog.
If you could have dinner with any female business leader, living or deceased, who would it be?
Oh, I couldn't possibly answer that. Oh, although I do really love, I can't remember her surname. Sarah, somebody off Dragon's Den. Absolutely love her. Northeastern lady. I can't remember her surname. She is fantastic. Real on it.
All right. So what's your favorite quote or mantra that keeps you motivated?
No such thing as failure. It's all feedback. Absolutely.
And what is one piece of advice you would give to aspiring female entrepreneurs?
Ooh. To be open to advice. Just do it.
All right, so here's my last Breakthrough Blitz question. What's the biggest misconception that people have about being a female entrepreneur, and how do you address it in your own experience?
I think the biggest misconception is that we don't work hard. I think that there is a view that because you're able to do things like the school run, you're able to make sure that if you want to, you're able to prioritize those elements of your life that you sat painting your nails and that you've not much better to do. I think the way in which you address that is quite simply the social proof. It's showing what you're doing. It's showing up. It's sharing the feedback that you're getting from other people. Having a chronology of what you're doing. So that might be photos. It might be posts on social media. But just giving that, just showing what it is that you're doing and what you're achieving.
Helen, thanks for sharing your knowledge today. Can you let the listeners and watchers know how they can get in touch with you?
Yes, you can go to LinkedIn and find me there. My name's Helen Kane and my business is Forte Strengths Limited. I hang out there most of the time. I find it a really productive space, a really helpful space where we can share ideas and keep a track on what's going on. I've also got my website, which is www.fortestrengths.co.uk. On there you can see an outline of what support it is that I offer, and also what's underpinning that, what it is that brings me into coaching. There's some stuff on there around Strength Scope, on positive psychology and NLP, because they're really the cornerstones of what it is that I offer.
Helen Kane, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks for tuning into the Cherish and Conquer podcast from MyrinaAi. Join our community of trailblazing women at community.MyrinaAi and get access to exclusive resources, checklists, and guides. If you found value in today's episode, please rate, review, subscribe, and share it across your social platforms. See you soon, and remember, barriers are for breaking.
Look at me rise above. That's my story.